I like to start off by saying that the Canada Energy Regulator, the headquarters, is in the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Tsuut'ina Nation, Stoney Nakoda, Métis Nation, Region 3 in Alberta. And the way that I was taught to do land acknowledgements is that you speak about the land, right? And so in Calgary, we are the place where two rivers meet. And two rivers meet in a very dry area in the prairies. You can imagine that this is an important area for people, right? A trading area, trading for goods, trading for ideas, trading for a variety of different things, mating, hunting, fishing. Right? And so this, I think, is the importance of the land that we have our headquarters on. And I say this because it really does impact how we do things and the importance of where we are and the data that we have. So for those of you who don't know the Canada Energy Regulator, which is probably most people here, we regulate primarily energy infrastructure and trade. So what that tangibly means is 1,400 international power lines, about 77,000 pipelines that span coast to coast, coast to coast, different provinces, territories, etc. And we also do a lot of energy information products. So this is one of our key flagship projects called Energy Futures, where we start modeling out where we believe Canada will go until 2050, I think, or 2040 is our last projections. And it goes by commodity, goes by province, goes by sector, and it's pretty well read and well cited in, newspapers and different articles, and energy traders all understand our publication and read it. Right? Good information product, but it's data, right? And when you create products like this, you create a product that is not necessarily accessible to a whole variety of people. And if you're thinking about the energy transition, if you're thinking about net zero, if you're thinking about climate change, these are all topics that we should be discussing in the public sphere. And that's everyone, right? And I could say that our products aren't geared towards that. How many people have actually read our publications, Energy Futures? Exactly, right? But that shouldn't be the case for such an important topic, right? So what do? We worked at that. We started hiring designers and design thinkers and data viz experts and user experience people. And we started looking at the data and starting to think about what people want to draw from that. And we developed this. Whoops, not my home. This one has no sound. So this is our data visualization interactive. So you could go by province, you could go by sector, you can play with the numbers. It's not Tableau, it's not Power BI. You could see over time, and it allows you to explore. Right? So a far cry from looking at tables and looking at open data sets and coding in R or Python. And what we realize is, we had a number of people that were looking at our open data sources and doing their own coding, but we had about 200 downloads per year, right? People who have a very specific skill set, probably that mirrors this room. but that's not the skill set of the average person. You also have people that know how to read, obviously, and pull out information. But what this data visualization allows you to do, and the same thing with open data, is you get to explore. You get to explore in a way that you could draw your own conclusions, right? And I think that's what we need to engage public policy, right? Being able to explore the data yourself when you don't know how to code. And so that's why we developed this. Not only did we develop this, but we developed, education curriculum for grade 9 students. We embedded this in the Science and Technology Museum in Ottawa, a whole variety of different ways where we could get this out to people. And so many more people use this visualization, and other subset of people read the report. Right? So you need both. You need those experts that want to draw very specific, tangible, targeted pieces of data that they want, and they know exactly what they're looking for. And then there are people that you want to explore. Right? And so this work actually started before I arrived. And I say that because when you develop these types of things, like these data visualizations, you actually attract a whole variety of other people. And these other variety of people are drawn to your work because they could see the people are committed to data, right? So if you go to a website and it really sucks, you're like, do I actually want to work there? There are parts of our website that aren't that great, but this part is really good. And so when you start seeing these multi-million-dollar data visualizations over time, you think, okay, well, that's an organization that's invested into a data culture, right? And by the way, if you're all data scientists, one of the first questions that you should ask in a job interview is, do you have data engineers? And if you don't have data engineers, then you're going to be cleaning a lot. And the data culture and the data maturity probably isn't as high, right? So I can tell you that one of those people that were intrigued by these data visualizations was me. I saw that these products were being developed, and I thought, okay, they're trying to create a new chief data officer, chief information officer that actually cares about data. They're willing to invest in this. I'm interested. Right? But if they didn't do any of this stuff, moving my family to Calgary, my small little family with like little kids, probably less likely that I would go. Right? And you have to think about the two when you're looking for different opportunities, are you actually going to be, is the organization invested or not? You see all this, it looks beautiful, nice. You could see that people invested in all of this data viz, right? I come into the organization 2018, and when I start opening up the treasure chests of data, what do I actually see? I see this, right? This is what the government of Canada actually is, right? Paper, lots and lots of paper. Yes, we invested in this. When you get into an organization, this is more of what you actually see. And I was a little fooled, I would say, because I thought that their data culture was a lot further ahead, and this is what I get. I'm now in charge of this. I have the library and the records room in our portfolio, and so I actually quite appreciate this a lot more now, and the effort that librarians put into cataloging and putting them into the right folders. But from a data science perspective, this drives me nuts, right? So when you start uncovering a little bit, and these are stats that are quite old now, but we've done about 700 different hearings. Hearings are different energy projects over the last 60 years, millions of pages off-site. I could tell you I don't necessarily know what's in all of them, right? Because sometimes back in the day, you didn't have a finding aid that you put into your box, right? Transcripts, oral traditional evidence, spoken by Indigenous communities that have testified at our hearings, just thousands of information requests. I have faxes. That one drives me nuts. I get faxes still now. Right? This is the reality of what we have in the government and probably what we have in a whole variety of different organizations, right? Data visualization, beautiful. When you open the doors, paper, right? This is what Trans Mountain actually looks like. This is a submission to us by the company. Binders, binders and binders and binders. And when you open up some of these binders, they're legal-sized tables folded over, right? With like rows and rows of numbers. Because they have to submit a whole variety of things to us as a regulator to assess so that we can understand the net benefit to Canada. And we can decide whether or not there is a net benefit and whether or not we should approve it. And that information could be anything from orca whales to impact of construction camps on remote communities. We have alcoholism rates in, the north, or STI counts from, remote communities because of construction camps, right? There's a whole variety of things, permafrost data, air quality data, NOx and SOx, right? Like so much data comes to us because what happens is you have to assess a baseline of the environment and the socioeconomic context before a pipeline is approved, and you have to say whether or not there's going to be changes and whether or not you can mitigate those changes. And after, if it is approved and you build one, for 1 year after construction, 3 years after construction, 5 years after construction, you actually have to redo all these studies to see whether or not you hit the mark and whether or not there was changes. And if there were changes and you put in mitigation factors, whether or not those hit, right? Pages and pages and pages of binders. That's what Trans Mountain actually looks like. Open it up, you get these beautiful tables. So we were talking about alignment sheets or maps. This is one about raptor nest counts. Opening up binders, this is what you actually see. And I like pointing out this one. So this is, a variety of pictures and tables about fish and wetlands. And one of my favorites is when you look at the bottom corner, it says unnamed wetland with the exact location of where it is. So this, to me, is potentially the only catalog, the only fish identifiers of this wetland that someone put down, because they don't even have a name for it. And I could tell you unnamed wetland is probably a term that we could search in all our binders, and it comes up quite often. I have tables where each row, under the name of wetland, it says unnamed wetland, unnamed wetland, unnamed wetland, for like rows and rows and rows of a table. So data that no one else has. This drives me nuts. So I'm a biologist by training, and this is valuable. Right? This is valuable. So you want to go to our website and you want to see the not so beautiful parts of our website. This is called RegDocs. This is where you go to get all the regulatory documents that are filed to us. It's our legal registry. You want to know exactly what someone said in one of our hearings? Of course, go for it. Go to C12391-1, Volume 2, Wednesday, October 12th, 2022, redacted A8H3S4. And you wonder why people find our processes inaccessible. I find the documentation inaccessible. I don't know who presented there. I don't know which hearing it's about. And maybe someone does in our organization. C213491-1 might mean something to someone, but I can tell you it doesn't mean anything to me. Right? I don't know if this is a transcript from an Indigenous First Nation. I don't know if environmentalists spoke about this. I don't know if it was about orca whales. Right? Someone might, but anyone going to our website may not. Right? So one of the big projects that we did a couple of years ago with UBC, the solder side of UBC, is how do we actually extract all this data? How do we find the valuable information in these paper documents or PDFs and make them more accessible? And so we took one component of these submissions. They're called ESAs, Environmental and Socioeconomic Assessment Documents, submitted to us, those binders. And we extracted every single table, map, and figure out of them. And we kept all the data provenance around it. We did this for the last 20 years, and now it's all searchable by topic, by pipeline, by project, by province, etc. Right? So now if you want to look up beavers, you don't have to go to our AH43297, click it open, Control F, find beavers, and see whether or not it was about beavers, and then move to the next document, N equals, 400,000, right? You could actually go to our website, and you could actually search it through. So this is what it looks like now.
Can you see the possibilities? Imagine accessing a treasure trove of information about Canada's land and water, weather and wildlife, public safety, environmental protection, human health, and more. For decades, thousands of scientific studies have been provided to the Canada Energy Regulator for energy infrastructure projects. What if this data became more accessible, searchable, and open? Introducing Birdie, Biophysical, Socioeconomic, and Regional Data and Information, the exciting new tool that unlocks the wealth of information hidden in our regulatory documents. Use keywords and filters to define your search, find your results, and download the data. Birdie can help scientists monitor changes to our environment, track the evolution of species at risk, and more. The possibilities are endless. At the CER, we're making it easier to learn from the past so you can participate in the future. Explore Birdie. What will you do with this information?
So much more exciting than going through PDFs, right? Control F, find. Way, way, way more accessible. And there's stuff that we still want to do with this product. One of the other things that we did before we actually launched it is we realized that there's a ton of information that is traditional knowledge. Right? So it doesn't necessarily belong to us. It was submitted to us so that we can make a better decision, but it doesn't belong to us. And can have an impact on the local community. Right? So we don't want to let people know that this is a sacred site, or this is a traditional hunting area for this species, because the community is worried about the viability and of that species. Right? And so we developed a machine learning algorithm to find these pieces and redact them before we published the website. This is where you have to start thinking about the impact of what you're doing on community and people. Right? Fortunately, this one was a little bit easier. I think we did a couple rounds of learning, but there was a couple words that highlight whether or not this could be traditional knowledge. So ceremonial, sacred areas, First Nations, gathering places, these are all indicators that this is material that we might need to redact. And so we figured out a way of doing it, training it, and then if a document had too many of these words, we completely removed it out of the search. Right? If it's just that table, then we remove that table out of the search. And so I told you that we've done the last 20 years of environmental assessment data documents, but I'm a data geek, right? And I'm an environmentalist, and the library and the records team are in our portfolio. And so one day I sat down and I pulled out some of the old documents. Right? So there's a very famous project called McKinsey Valley that is probably one of the most famous environmental assessments that was done in Canada. It was the first major project proposal in the north, so Northern Economic Development. It was also one of the first projects that engaged Indigenous communities. And in that engagement, it became so popular and so profound of a change for those communities that CBC used to run our hearings on primetime radio. Yes, radio back in the day. And it actually turned into a coffee table book, the results of the hearing. So as a public policy geek, I went into that document. You have to think about, this was early 1970s where this engagement started happening. This was a time when First Nations, Métis, Inuit people were not engaged on projects. And having their voice in our hearings was one of the firsts. I personally think that it led to a generation of Indigenous lawyers, because by the end of the project, it was decided that not now, we're not going to do this project, and it led to a 50-year moratorium on energy development in the north. But let's look inside the document. This is caribou tracks in various communities. Right? This is from 1974. This is caribou migration paths. This is a helicopter study from 1973. And just to put it into perspective, 1973, it doesn't seem that long ago. Right? The environmental movement is believed to be started by one book, like Silent Spring, which was published in 1962. The Department of Environment was created in 1972 or 1973. So these studies occur at the exact same time that the department was even created. We have studies that predate the Department of Environment because people didn't track these things before. These might be some of the first environmental data points that we have for Canada. Isn't that interesting? And when we started going through where we could go with these different products and why we created Birdie and started extracting this data, one of the former environment commissioners for Ontario said, universities are starving for this type of information about change. We lack change data. So I say old data is sexy. Too often you hear people say, oh, IoTs or real time or this and that. And, don't get me wrong, it is really cool. Text mining, image recognition, all this is really phenomenal. But old data is sexy because you can't actually recreate some of this stuff. The Department of Environment was only created in 1972. And it's not just environmental data. Transcripts have been such a really rich source of material. Because we run as a quasi-judicial court, people present to us. I was telling you about Mackenzie Valley. This is what a transcript looks like. And when you look and read some of these things, you'll see sacred sites being mentioned. You'll see, medicinal plants being talked about. Rat root, the importance of rat root for Métis people. You'll hear about residential schools and the impact of that on communities. So many various pieces. Buffalo teachings. Why buffalo teachings are really, really important in a particular nation. This is the type of stuff that people tell us in our hearings because they're trying to tell us the impact of these projects on their community, right? They might be pro or against some of these projects, but they want us to know that these are things that are sacred to them, or these are things that are really important to them. And if you are going to build this, please be careful of these things, right? This is the impact. And so we did a project, Raymond mentioned about 4 years ago, where the data for social good fellowship team actually extracted all that data. So remember A43-72996, whatever that transcript was? The team here went through every transcript and coded who participated in that hearing, which elders, which traditional knowledge keepers, which communities were present, right? What hearing was it about? And then they topic modeled all of it. So we know that this one, they mentioned buffalo. This one, they mentioned something else, right? Now we have a source of who spoke where and which transcripts belong to which nations, right? And I can tell you now, where I couldn't tell you before, 144 different nations presented at our hearings. We know exactly which transcripts they are. We know exactly which elders spoke at them. And this is important because this knowledge is being lost. Elders are going to the journey world, right? Only so many people have this knowledge. And so what I thought was going to be an easy project, how do we repatriate this knowledge back to communities, ended up being a little bit of a 2-year project. I never thought as a CIO that I would assemble and co-design an information stewardship system with elders. But that's what we did. We brought in about 20 to 30 traditional knowledge keepers, primarily in the Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 area, because that's where we were located, to better understand, are these documents important to you? Is this knowledge, is this sacred knowledge, or is this general knowledge? And how do you take care of this? How do we give this back to communities? What is the proper protocol to do this? I was a little naive. I just thought, okay, well, now we can just email these communities and say, hey, guess what? We have these documents. Do you want them? Do you want them in PDF format? Oh, I also have the audio file of them. Do you want that? Can't do that. This is one of the quotes from one of the elders in our engagement sessions when we were doing our elder knowledge circle. So can you just imagine on that information that CER is holding, how it could really benefit the community? Because some of them are lost and they're searching. And I'll tell you that when she says them, and they are lost and searching, she means the youth. She means that youth in the community have not been taught traditional ways and are lost and searching and are lacking identity. And many elders feel this way. Many elders feel that this is the root cause for a lot of the issues that are happening in their community. This one is just mind-boggling to me. Makin Emma, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, is the Blackfoot term that closely approximates museum. Okay? They don't really have a term for museum, but this is the closest that they use. The literal translation for this is Death Lodge. Death Lodge. Where culture, where artifacts, where bundles go to die and are not being actively used in community. What a profound notion, eh? And that's what these documents are doing, right? We have them on an F drive somewhere, right? Or printed off on our shelves, not actively being used. And so we started a journey of repatriating this. We've started piloting how we go about doing this with communities. We had the Knowledge Elder Circle to guide us. These are guiding principles, but you're going to have to go nation to nation to learn how to do this. Because each nation, their protocol may be a little bit different. Their wants may be a little bit different. Maybe these ones want youth to be in there. Do we need to smudge? Do we need to engage elders? How do we go about doing this? But we've started, and we're going to continue doing this. This is what we're able to do because we named those files. And we're able to meta tag who presented and which communities they came from. And it's no longer A43-72996. Do you know who these tapes belong to? And the elder was pointing to her granddaughter. This is why we do the work that we're doing. But, and it sounds like we've done a lot, we've done 2% of our legal registry. It might be at 3% now, but around there. And this is why we came back. The project that we did with UBC was so successful, the two of them, that we came back to ask for help. This is what an evidence list looks like. So these are all the documents, well, one page out of probably 137, of all the evidence that was submitted to court to make a decision. We think that this could be gold. Because I imagine a scenario where First Nations come to us. So right now, any individual could write to us and say, hey, government, I'm going to use your access to information process, and I would like to have all documents related to three-toed frogs. I don't know. Are there three-toed frogs? And then we would have to go through a search, and we would have to find all those. I don't know if we could do this if a nation asked us to collect all the documents that are theirs. But I can imagine that this is one place where we could look. Right? So you could see how this is NGTL, a project, and that Ochese First Nation, Samson Cree Nation, Driftpile Cree Nation, all came to us. And so can we start tagging all these documents and identifying which ones came from these nations? And then the other thing that would be really interesting is, can you look through these documents and determine which ones are about their community or their region that they would want, that are associated with their land? Because I think we should do both. I think if a nation came to us and said, I want all our documents, it should not just be, here are the documents that you gave us, here are the documents that are related. And if you could tag all these, this would be super powerful. This is Birdie right now, the little micro commercial that you guys saw. I love this, and I could talk about it from a design perspective all the time. You could see how you could search by topic area, fish or species at risk, human health. You could search by project, provinces, year, but you can't search by location. And location matters, right? So we have tons of tables that have lat longs, UTMs. Some of them have location names. This township. Some of them have this weird, like, pipeline notation called linear post. So it's the 523rd kilometer from this point. If we could start tagging probable locations for all these tables or these documents, then you can make it a lot easier for nations to find ones that are in their community. You could also help environmentalists find areas of research of change. Right? We can't do this right now, and we'd love help for this. This is the project. This is so that we could help environmentalists. This is how we could help local communities. This is how we could start tagging these documents. This is how you can use data to build trust. This is how you can build dialogue, open science, cumulative effects, reconciliation. This is not optimization. This is not about tricking a user to buy more off your website, right? I think this is real work that I'd love your help on. You could see our journey over the last couple of years and how data has actually changed us, right? I don't think the Canada Energy Regulator was thinking about these kind of things 5 years ago. We weren't creating elder knowledge circles. We didn't have a strategic priority on reconciliation. We didn't think of ourselves as the best repository of environmental change data. Right? This is how data changed us. And this is how you can help. Thanks.